has confirmed it's launched an attack on Iran.
100 missiles in the sky. A U.S. supercarrier at the center of the storm. 14 American bases reportedly reduced to rubble in a single night. If the headlines were true, this would be the largest direct clash between Iran and the United States in modern history. But what really happened in those critical hours? And how close did the world come to the brink? In the early hours before dawn, social media platforms lit up with unverified reports of a massive Iranian strike targeting the USS Gerald R. carrier strike group somewhere in the Middle East. Anonymous accounts spoke of coordinated salvos, hypersonic trajectories, and simultaneous attacks on U.S. military installations across the region. Within minutes, the story spread like wildfire. A saturation strike designed to overwhelm even the most advanced naval defenses on Earth. According to these circulating claims, the attack began with waves of ballistic and anti-ship missiles launched from multiple locations. Observers described radar screens flooded with contacts. Some posts alleged that regional bases housing U.S. forces had gone dark. Others claimed dramatic interceptions at sea, streaks of fire over the water, and explosions echoing across the Gulf. No official confirmations, no clear satellite imagery, just fragments, speculation, and escalating narratives. The USS Gerald R. is not just any ship. It represents the cutting edge of American naval power. A floating airbase equipped with layered missile defense, electronic warfare systems, and a full air wing capable of striking targets hundreds of miles inland. Striking such a vessel would be a symbolic and strategic gamble of enormous magnitude. Could even a coordinated barrage of dozens or 100 missiles truly cripple a modern carrier group? Military analysts have long debated the vulnerability of carriers in an era of precision-guided munitions and drone swarms. Then there are the alleged strikes on 14 bases. U.S. installations across the Middle East vary widely in size and fortification. Some are major air hubs, others are smaller logistical outposts. The idea of simultaneous destruction raises questions about timing, capability, and intent. Was this a demonstration of force? A warning? Or simply an information operation amplified in the chaos of breaking news? As governments remained cautious in their statements, the information battlefield intensified. Competing narratives emerged. Some sources insisted the majority of incoming threats were intercepted. Others claimed significant damage had been concealed. In the fog of war, or the fog of rumor, perception can move faster than fact. Tonight, we break down the timeline of the alleged attack, the military realities behind the claims, and the strategic consequences if such a confrontation were to occur. How does a carrier strike group defend itself against mass missile salvos? What would it take to disable multiple hardened bases in a single operation? And most importantly, how do we separate verified information from psychological warfare in a region where every signal can be weaponized? Stay with us as we examine what is known, what is claimed, and what this episode reveals about the fragile balance of power in one of the world's most volatile theaters. In the early hours before sunrise, when most of the region was still wrapped in darkness, the first reports began to surface. Radar operators aboard the USS Gerald R. had allegedly detected multiple fast-moving objects rising from several launch points along the Iranian coastline. Within minutes, unverified channels were claiming that as many as 100 missiles had been fired in a coordinated salvo aimed at the carrier strike group and several U.S. installations across the Middle East. The scale of the claim alone was enough to send shockwaves through defense circles. A saturation attack of that magnitude would represent one of the boldest direct actions ever taken against a U.S. naval formation. The USS Gerald R. the lead ship of its class and one of the most technologically advanced aircraft carriers ever built, is designed to operate at the center of a layered defensive network. It rarely sails alone. Guided missile destroyers and cruisers equipped with the Aegis combat system typically form a protective perimeter, extending the defensive envelope dozens of miles beyond the carrier itself. According to defense analysts, any incoming missile threat would have to penetrate multiple layers of detection, interception, and electronic countermeasures before even approaching the vessel. Yet the narrative spreading online that morning suggested the attackers were attempting to overwhelm those very systems by sheer volume. Witness accounts, some credible, others impossible to verify, spoke of streaks of light crossing the night sky. Commercial pilots flying at high altitude reportedly observed distant flashes near the horizon. Regional monitoring groups claimed that early warning satellites had registered multiple launch signatures within a span of less than 5 minutes. While no official numbers were released, speculation quickly hardened into certainty in the digital sphere. This was a coordinated strike intended not merely to harass, but to test the survivability of a carrier strike group under maximum pressure. Complicating matters were simultaneous reports of impacts or attempted strikes on U.S. military facilities in the region. The United States maintains a network of bases across several Middle Eastern countries, ranging from major air hubs to smaller logistical and intelligence sites. Social media posts alleged that as many as 14 installations had been targeted in parallel with the naval assault. Some accounts claimed power outages at specific facilities. Others cited intercepted communications, suggesting damage to runways or storage depots. Independent verification, however, remained scarce in the first hours, and official spokespeople declined to confirm operational details. What gave the story additional intensity was the claim, never formally substantiated, that several of the missiles were described as maneuverable or next-generation systems designed to evade traditional tracking. While Iran does possess a diverse missile arsenal, including ballistic and anti-ship variants, the suggestion that a portion of the salvo incorporated newly upgraded guidance packages added a layer of uncertainty. Analysts noted that even incremental improvements in accuracy or flight profile could complicate interception efforts, particularly in a dense multi-vector attack. Inside the carrier group, standard doctrine would call for rapid threat assessment, coordinated defensive fire, and electronic countermeasures intended to disrupt guidance systems. Though exact procedures remain classified, naval experts emphasize that modern carrier groups train extensively for complex missile defense scenarios. In public statements released later in the day, U.S. officials acknowledged attempted hostile actions, but asserted that the majority of incoming threats had been neutralized before reaching their intended targets. They stopped short of confirming exact figures, fueling further debate. As the hours passed, competing narratives continued to evolve. Some sources insisted that at least one escort vessel had sustained minor damage from debris, though no catastrophic losses were reported. Others argued that the dramatic numbers circulating online were inflated as part of a broader information campaign. The truth likely lay somewhere between the extremes, a serious escalation, but not the apocalyptic strike initially portrayed. What remained undeniable was the psychological impact. For a brief window, the world confronted the possibility that one of the most powerful symbols of American military projection had come under direct, large-scale attack. Whether measured in missiles or in perception, the opening moments of that confrontation reshaped the strategic conversation overnight. At the center of the confrontation stand two very different military systems shaped by decades of doctrine, geography, and political ambition. Iran has spent years building a strategy designed not to match the United States ship for ship or aircraft for aircraft, but to offset American technological superiority with asymmetry, dispersion, and missile power. Its missile arsenal is widely regarded as the largest and most diverse in the Middle East, including short and medium-range ballistic missiles, land-based anti-ship systems, cruise missiles, and a rapidly expanding fleet of unmanned aerial vehicles. Much of this capability is operated or overseen by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which has developed a doctrine focused on deterrence through the credible threat of retaliation. Rather than seeking open ocean dominance, Iran's planners have concentrated on exploiting the confined waters of the Persian Gulf and surrounding choke points, where geography can compress reaction times and complicate defensive calculations. Over the past decade, Iran has showcased missile tests and naval exercises intended to signal that even heavily defended targets are not beyond reach. Anti-ship missiles such as variants of the Noor and other coastal defense systems are designed to threaten surface vessels operating within regional waters. Ballistic missiles with maneuverable re-entry capabilities have been presented domestically as breakthroughs in accuracy. While many of these claims are difficult to independently verify, Western defense analysts generally agree that Iran's inventory is both substantial and continuously evolving. In addition to conventional missiles, Iran has invested heavily in drones, some of which have demonstrated long-range strike capabilities. In a hypothetical large-scale confrontation, a coordinated mix of ballistic trajectories, low-flying cruise missiles, and unmanned systems could serve to complicate interception efforts, especially if launched from multiple dispersed sites. There are also persistent reports, never fully confirmed, that Iran has quietly upgraded certain missile guidance systems with improved satellite navigation resilience and terminal phase maneuvering software. While the extent of these improvements remains debated, even incremental advances could enhance survivability against layered missile defenses. Some regional observers claim that in recent exercises, Iranian forces rehearsed synchronized launches from inland and coastal batteries to simulate a saturation strike against a carrier group. Whether those drills fully reflect operational readiness is uncertain, but they underscore the emphasis placed on overwhelming an adversary's defensive envelope rather than attempting a single decisive blow. Opposite this strategy stands the United States, whose military presence in the Middle East has for decades relied on forward-deployed air and naval power. The U.S. Navy's carrier strike group is built around layered defense, networked sensors, and rapid offensive reach. A vessel such as the USS Gerald R represents the newest generation of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, capable of launching sustained air operations through advanced electromagnetic catapult systems and improved sortie generation rates. It operates alongside guided missile destroyers and cruisers equipped with sophisticated radar arrays and interceptor missiles capable of engaging threats at multiple ranges. The integration of airborne early warning aircraft, electronic warfare platforms, and satellite-linked targeting networks gives the strike group a broad operational picture extending far beyond the horizon. In addition to naval assets, the United States maintains a constellation of bases throughout the region that support logistics, intelligence, and air operations. These installations vary in size and fortification, but collectively, they provide strategic depth and redundancy. American doctrine emphasizes flexibility and rapid response, with the ability to project air power from both sea and land-based platforms. There have been occasional suggestions that certain regional bases have quietly reinforced hardened shelters and dispersed key assets in anticipation of missile threats, though official details remain limited. The contrast between the two sides is stark. Iran relies on concentrated bursts of firepower designed to disrupt and deter, leveraging geography and missile volume. The United States depends on layered defenses, technological integration, and sustained power projection. In any potential clash, the interaction between these approaches would define the tempo of events. A saturation attack would test the resilience of American defensive systems, while U.S. counterstrikes would likely aim to degrade launch infrastructure and command networks. The balance is not merely one of numbers, but of timing, coordination, and the ability to absorb the first shock without losing operational coherence. As the opening shock gave way to sustained engagement, the battle entered its most decisive phase: interception and counterstrike. Modern naval warfare unfolds in layers measured in seconds rather than hours, and once the initial wave of incoming threats was detected, the engagement would have become a contest of coordination, software logic, and crew discipline. Defensive systems tied into shipborne radar and external sensor feeds would begin assigning interceptors automatically, prioritizing targets based on trajectory, speed, and projected impact point. In a saturation scenario, however, even automated systems face the strain of decision density. Operators must constantly reassess whether incoming tracks are genuine warheads, decoys, debris, or electronic ghosts generated by jamming. The complexity multiplies when trajectories vary in altitude and velocity, forcing defenders to manage high-arcing ballistic paths alongside sea-skimming cruise profiles. Analysts later speculated that the most dangerous window may have lasted less than 10 minutes. During that period, defensive interceptors would have been launched in rapid succession, each costing millions of dollars and guided by precise tracking data. Reports circulated that several incoming objects altered course during their terminal phase, a capability that, if accurate, would complicate fire control solutions. While there is no verified evidence that advanced maneuvering re-entry vehicles were used in large numbers, even a small percentage equipped with improved guidance could have forced defenders to commit additional interceptors per target. In high-density engagements, the arithmetic of missile defense becomes critical. If each incoming projectile requires 2 defensive shots to ensure a high probability of kill, the defender's magazine depth can diminish quickly. Amid the defensive barrage, electronic warfare likely played a central role. Modern strike groups are equipped with systems designed to jam, spoof, or confuse guidance signals. Some observers claimed that brief disruptions in regional satellite navigation signals coincided with the peak of the exchange, suggesting aggressive countermeasures were in play. Whether these disruptions were intentional or incidental remains unclear, but the information environment grew increasingly chaotic. Conflicting radar tracks were posted online by anonymous sources, purporting to have access to maritime monitoring data. In reality, much of this data may have been reconstructed or misinterpreted, yet its circulation added to the perception that the defensive shield was under extraordinary strain. The possibility of partial penetration could not be dismissed. Even the most advanced layered systems are designed around probability rather than absolute certainty. A single missile slipping through outer defenses does not necessarily mean catastrophic loss, but it does change the strategic narrative. Unconfirmed reports suggested that one escort vessel experienced a near miss, resulting in superficial damage from falling debris, though no official statement substantiated structural compromise. What is certain is that naval doctrine anticipates such contingencies, emphasizing compartmentalization, damage control, and rapid restoration of combat capability. The survivability of large warships is built not only on interception, but on resilience under impact. While interception efforts continued at sea, attention shifted to the regional bases reportedly targeted in parallel. Facilities dispersed across the Middle East vary widely in defensive architecture. Some benefit from hardened aircraft shelters, reinforced command bunkers, and integrated air defense batteries, while others rely on more limited protective measures. In the immediate aftermath, scattered claims of runway craters and localized fires appeared on social platforms. Commercial satellite imagery providers, racing to task their assets, began releasing low-resolution images within hours. Early analysis indicated at least minor surface damage at 2 installations, though the scale appeared limited. Assertions of complete destruction at multiple sites lacked corroborating visual evidence. The simultaneous targeting of multiple fixed facilities raises operational questions. Coordinating strikes across different countries requires precise timing and reliable communications under pressure. It also introduces diplomatic volatility, as host nations may interpret attacks on shared facilities differently depending on political context. Some regional governments issued carefully worded statements acknowledging security incidents without assigning blame. Others called for restraint, signaling concern that their territory might become a wider battleground. Oil markets reacted sharply in early trading sessions, reflecting fears of broader instability, before partially stabilizing as official briefings suggested the situation was contained. In the hours that followed, the information war intensified. Competing narratives sought to define the outcome before comprehensive assessments could be completed. Certain outlets emphasized the scale of the attempted strike, portraying it as a demonstration of unprecedented reach. Others focused on the defensive performance, framing the event as proof of deterrent strength. The absence of immediate, detailed official disclosure created space for speculation. In modern conflicts, perception often outruns fact. By the time damage assessments are finalized, public opinion may already be shaped by initial impressions. the prospect of counterstrike loomed over the region. In scenarios where missile launch infrastructure is identified with sufficient confidence, retaliatory action can unfold rapidly. Air and naval assets positioned within operational range provide flexibility for calibrated responses, ranging from limited strikes against specific launch sites to broader campaigns targeting command nodes and logistical networks. Yet retaliation carries escalation risk. If initial strikes were intended as signaling rather than as an opening move in sustained conflict, a disproportionate response could widen the confrontation. Military planners must weigh not only tactical advantage, but political consequence. There were also reports, unconfirmed but persistent, that cyber operations accompanied the physical exchange. Temporary disruptions in regional communication networks fueled speculation that digital systems had been targeted to degrade coordination or obscure real-time situational awareness. Cyber components in modern military planning are well documented, though their specific role in this episode remains opaque. Even limited digital interference, however, can amplify confusion during kinetic engagements, complicating attribution and response timelines. Ultimately, the combined picture that emerged suggested neither total devastation nor trivial skirmish. The scale of the attempted engagement, as described in various channels, exceeded routine harassment, but fell short of the catastrophic scenarios initially imagined. Defensive systems appear to have absorbed the majority of the threat, though localized impacts and limited damage at select sites cannot be ruled out. Strategically, the episode underscored how quickly a concentrated exchange can ripple outward, affecting energy markets, alliance calculations, and domestic political discourse far beyond the immediate theater. Perhaps the most consequential outcome lies not in physical damage, but in precedent. A large-scale direct exchange, even if largely contained, reshapes deterrence assumptions. It tests response thresholds, reveals operational tempos, and exposes vulnerabilities, whether real or perceived. Both sides are likely to analyze sensor data, interception rates, and command responsiveness in meticulous detail. Future planning will incorporate those lessons, adjusting tactics, magazine depth, and deployment patterns accordingly. In that sense, the battle, whether viewed as a dramatic escalation or a narrowly averted crisis, marks a data point in an evolving strategic contest. One where every engagement informs the next, and where the line between demonstration and war grows thinner with each exchange.